Emily and her little sister Lily were supposed to be safe at home. But what detectives found hidden in the basement would shock the entire neighborhood and reveal a secret no one could have imagined. It was a quiet Wednesday morning in the sleepy suburb, the kind of morning where everything seems ordinary and nothing out of place. Birds chirped in the trees, mailboxes stood neatly in a row, and the streets were still damp from an early drizzle. Yet something was wrong at the house at the end of Maple Lane. For days, neighbors had noticed a strange, foul smell wafting through the air, a heavy, chemical-like stench that made some people wrinkle their noses and hurried past. At first, it was easy to ignore, dismissed as garbage left too long or the result of the damp weather. But the smell persisted, growing stronger each day until it became impossible to overlook. People whispered among themselves, wondering if an animal had died inside the house. No one dared to investigate too closely, afraid of what they might find, yet the unease lingered. The house itself appeared normal from the outside. Its paint was slightly chipped, the lawn tended but not perfectly manicured, and a single swing hung motionless from a tree in the front yard. Windows reflected the pale morning sunlight, hiding the dark secrets that lay behind them. On that morning, a delivery driver noticed something unusual. The front door, which was usually tightly shut, was ajar. At first, he thought the family might have simply left it open by accident, but as he approached, the stench hit him, unmistakable and thick. Hesitating for a moment, he called the police, explaining what he had found. Within minutes, patrol cars arrived, their lights flashing silently in the calm street, drawing the attention of curious neighbors. Detectives entered the house carefully, their senses alert to any signs of danger. The interior was deceptively ordinary. Furniture was in place, dishes in the sink, and remnants of everyday life were scattered throughout the rooms. It was a house that looked lived in, familiar, and safe. Yet a subtle, unsettling energy hung in the air. As the officers moved through the space, their eyes were drawn to a locked door at the bottom of the stairs. The basement. A faint noise, or perhaps a sense, prompted them to unlock it. What they found inside made their stomachs turn. A small, grimy box sat in the corner of the basement, partially covered by a tattered blanket. Its presence alone seemed innocuous, but the detectives knew instinctively that something was terribly wrong. When the lid was lifted, the shocking truth emerged. Inside lay the body of a young girl, her face pale and eyes closed as if she were simply sleeping. Yet the stillness told another story. The air in the basement was heavy with the smell that had plagued the neighborhood, a combination of decay and neglect that spoke of weeks, perhaps months, of being hidden away. The officers worked quickly, documenting everything and securing the scene, while the news of the discovery began to spread. Word traveled fast. Within hours, neighbors gathered outside the house, their faces pale and their voices hushed as they tried to comprehend what had happened. Parents held their children closer, shaken by the realization that such horror could exist so close to home. Journalists arrived, cameras rolling and microphones ready, eager to report on the tragedy that had unfolded in this quiet suburb. Social media erupted with speculation and outrage, and the story of the little girl hidden in the basement became a grim sensation overnight. The discovery had revealed more than a crime. It had uncovered a secret world of fear and neglect that had gone unnoticed for far too long. Investigators worked tirelessly to uncover the identity of the little girl whose life had ended in such a tragic and hidden way. School records, medical files, and social service reports became the building blocks of her story, revealing a life marked by isolation and quiet suffering. She was 10 years old, small for her age, with wide, observant eyes that often seemed to watch the world from a distance. Teachers described her as quiet, polite, and withdrawn, the kind of student who rarely raised her hand or spoke up in class. She was not a troublemaker, nor did she draw attention to herself, but there were small signs that something was wrong. Frequent absences, unexplained bruises, and an almost constant look of fear had been noted by several staff members. Despite these warning signs, the system had failed to intervene effectively, allowing her pain to remain hidden from the outside world. Neighbors recalled glimpses of her life from the street. She sometimes played in the yard, swinging alone or watching other children from a distance. Yet she seemed hesitant to engage. The neighborhood, outwardly calm and safe, had never suspected the darkness lurking behind the walls of her home. Few people had stepped inside the house, and even fewer had spent meaningful time with the girl. She had no close friends to confide in, no extended family nearby, and her world had been largely contained within the walls of the house. Investigators began to see a pattern emerge. The girl had lived in a state of quiet terror, isolated from the very community that might have offered help. Social workers' visits to the home months earlier offered a chilling glimpse into her daily life. Complaints of neglect had been made, but the visits had been brief and superficial. In a single hour, a social worker had noted that the child appeared clean and well-fed, a misleading snapshot that failed to reveal the depth of her suffering. The mother, calm and composed during the inspections, had skillfully concealed the girl's fear and pain. By the time the girl's life ended, the signs of her abuse had been hidden so effectively that even those trained to recognize them had been deceived. As detectives pieced together her story, a picture of profound loneliness and vulnerability emerged. The girl had sought small ways to connect with the outside world, a wave to a neighbor, a note left in a backpack. But these gestures went unnoticed or unacknowledged. The house, once a place of supposed safety, had become a prison where fear and silence dominated. Her existence was marked by routine, by careful avoidance of conflict, and by a constant awareness of the volatile environment inside her own home. The deeper investigators looked, the more disturbing patterns appeared. The girl had been systematically isolated, her movements monitored, her interactions controlled. Anything resembling normal childhood freedom had been stripped away. Each piece of evidence painted a picture of prolonged suffering, a life overshadowed by fear and secrecy. Understanding her past was essential not only to identifying the circumstances of her death, but also to exposing the failures that had allowed such tragedy to occur. Every report, every recollection, and every piece of documentation added to a portrait of a child who had quietly endured more than most could imagine, a child whose story demanded to be heard even after she was gone. Attention quickly turned to the family living in the house, as detectives began to search for answers among the people closest to the girl. The mother, a woman in her late 30s, became the focal point of the investigation. She appeared calm on the surface, but her evasive behavior during questioning drew suspicion. Friends and acquaintances described her as controlling, secretive, and quick to anger, painting a picture of a woman capable of hiding dark truths behind a facade of normalcy. She maintained a carefully curated image in public, attending community events and interacting politely with neighbors, yet investigators suspected that this outward composure masked a far more sinister reality within the walls of her home. The father, who had been largely absent from the girl's life, provided little insight. His limited presence had shielded him from scrutiny, and early interviews offered few clues. Detectives began to suspect that he had been either complicit in the concealment or deliberately uninvolved, creating an environment in which the mother's control went unchecked. As the investigation progressed, officers sifted through personal belongings, phone records, and digital correspondence, searching for a motive, a spark, or a misstep that could illuminate the truth. What they found was both disturbing and perplexing. Journal entries hidden in a drawer revealed deep resentment toward the girl. Angry, fragmented notes detailed frustration over perceived burdens and responsibilities, often paired with instructions for secrecy. The writing suggested that the girl's isolation had been intentional, not incidental, and that her suffering had been planned and sustained over time. Evidence from the home itself added another layer of concern. Detectives discovered remnants of surveillance equipment in the basement and throughout the house, cameras strategically positioned to monitor the child's movements. It became clear that the girl had been kept under constant observation, her privacy stripped away and her environment tightly controlled. The discovery of these devices raised disturbing questions about the lengths to which her guardians had gone to maintain secrecy. The evidence pointed to premeditation and deliberate concealment, shifting the case from one of neglect to one of calculated manipulation and control. Then came a breakthrough that changed the investigation's direction. Hidden footage recovered from one of the cameras revealed the girl being confined in the basement for extended periods. She appeared frightened, pacing or huddled in corners, her small figure dwarfed by the shadowy space. The recordings were chilling in their clarity. This was not the result of an accident or momentary lapse of judgment. Someone had purposefully restricted her freedom, creating a pattern of confinement that spanned weeks. The footage painted a stark picture of deliberate abuse, forcing investigators to confront the grim reality of the girl's final days. Despite these findings, the motive remained unclear. Financial stress, emotional instability, and controlling tendencies provided context but not explanation. Detectives were faced with a central question. Why hide the girl in the basement rather than seek help when she was suffering? The answers lay partially in the mother's meticulous planning and her ability to manipulate perception, but something more shadowy lingered. The case began to hint at complexities beyond a single perpetrator, suggesting hidden relationships and unknown influences that had contributed to the girl's tragic fate. Every revelation deepened the sense of unease, revealing a calculated cruelty that few could have anticipated, and leaving investigators searching for threads that would ultimately unravel the full story. As the investigation unfolded, a surprising twist shifted the focus of the case and sent shockwaves through the detectives handling it. Weeks into questioning and evidence review, a neighbor came forward with information that had previously been overlooked. They remembered seeing a man entering the house late at night on multiple occasions, someone unfamiliar to the family and clearly not a friend or relative. This revelation forced investigators to reconsider their initial assumptions. The mother, long suspected of sole responsibility, might not have acted entirely alone. The possibility of a second person involved in the girl's death introduced an entirely new layer of complexity, one that demanded immediate attention. Detectives began re-examining the father's history and contacts, tracing phone calls, messages, and online activity. It became evident that the father had connections to an individual with a criminal record that included violent offenses and prior interactions with the law. The pattern of communication was inconsistent and secretive, suggesting that contact between the father and this unknown man had been deliberately concealed. Investigators theorized that the man could have been an accomplice, someone who aided in hiding the child or even directly contributed to her death. DNA samples taken from the basement, the box, and surrounding surfaces were sent for analysis, and the results confirmed what detectives had feared. An unknown male had been present, leaving traces that tied him to the scene. This discovery stunned both law enforcement and the community. The case, once viewed as a tragic story of neglect and cruelty by a single parent, now revealed itself as something far more sinister. The girl's death was not only a product of isolation and abuse, but also part of a calculated effort by multiple adults to conceal the truth. The thought that another person had knowingly participated in this act added a chilling dimension. Every detail, the locked basement, the surveillance cameras, the carefully hidden journal entries, began to fit together in a new way, suggesting a coordinated effort to manipulate and control the situation. Detectives expanded their search, combing through digital footprints, surveillance footage from nearby streets, and witness statements. Patterns emerged that indicated the second individual had been involved over an extended period, visiting the house under the cover of darkness, observing the girl, and ensuring that her confinement remained secret. The mother's role was no longer isolated. She had been part of a larger, darker plan. The involvement of another adult who had remained hidden from public view raised uncomfortable questions about trust, accountability, and the lengths people would go to conceal wrongdoing. With this revelation, law enforcement faced a race against time. The second perpetrator could still be at large, possibly planning to evade capture or erase any remaining evidence. Every step of the investigation now carried a heightened sense of urgency as detectives worked to connect the man to the events that led to the girl's death. The shocking twist transformed the case from a story of domestic neglect into a complex criminal conspiracy, where secrecy, manipulation, and fear intersected in the most horrifying ways. The discovery of the second individual not only brought the investigation into sharper focus, but also underscored the frightening reality that the girl's suffering had been intentionally orchestrated by more than one adult, a revelation that would leave the community and investigators grappling with disbelief and horror for months to come. Weeks of relentless investigation finally led authorities to a breakthrough that would bring the case closer to resolution. The second suspect, the man whose presence had remained a mystery for so long, was traced to a nearby city. He had assumed a new identity and was attempting to live quietly, blending into the community to avoid detection. Investigators worked meticulously to confirm his whereabouts, cross-referencing employment records, surveillance footage, and digital activity. When officers moved in to apprehend him, the man was caught off guard, offering little resistance as he was taken into custody. His arrest marked a turning point in the case, providing a sense of closure for detectives and the beginning of justice for the girl who had been silenced too soon. During questioning, the man admitted to being present in the house and assisting in concealing the child's body, though he claimed he had not directly caused her death. The confession, while partial, revealed disturbing details about the coordination between him and the mother, shedding light on the methods they had used to hide the crime. Investigators learned how meticulously they had planned each step, from the placement of cameras in the basement to the timing of visits and the way they manipulated appearances in public. The extent of their planning revealed a calculated effort to avoid suspicion, turning the home into a prison for the child and a carefully constructed stage of deception for anyone who might come looking. The mother faced a series of charges that reflected the gravity of her actions, including murder, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice. Court proceedings brought her hidden cruelty into the light, exposing the months of neglect, manipulation, and confinement that had defined the girl's final days. Evidence presented at trial, from journal entries and surveillance footage to forensic findings, painted a picture of sustained abuse and premeditated concealment. The legal process was painstaking, each detail examined to ensure that justice would be served and that the full extent of her actions would be recognized by the law. As the case concluded, the community was left grappling with the stark reality of what had occurred behind closed doors. Parents, neighbors, and school officials questioned how a tragedy of such magnitude could have gone unnoticed for so long. Awareness campaigns and policy reviews were initiated, emphasizing the importance of vigilance, reporting, and intervention when signs of child neglect or abuse appear. The girl's story became a catalyst for change, a reminder that even small, quiet signals of distress should never be ignored. Her suffering, while irreversible, prompted a broader examination of systemic failures and the need for stronger protections for vulnerable children. The girl's life, though tragically cut short, left an enduring impact. Her story highlighted the dangers that can hide in plain sight, the consequences of inaction, and the resilience of law enforcement and social services in uncovering the truth. Justice, in its legal sense, had been served, but the emotional and moral weight of the case lingered, haunting those who had witnessed the aftermath. The tragedy underscored the importance of vigilance, compassion, and accountability, ensuring that her story would not be forgotten. In the end, the investigation revealed more than a crime. It uncovered a human story of fear, secrecy, and the ultimate consequences of neglect, leaving an indelible mark on everyone involved and a legacy that would drive change for years to come.